Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone here joining our edition of the EIPA in Conversation with. Today, we're going to talk about the topic of knowledge management in the public sector, embracing digitalization and AI. We're very happy to have our speakers here with us today who have kindly accepted to discuss this topic with you. And I'm going to present them right now. So firstly, we have Professor Dr. Klaus North. He's a professor of international management at the Wiesbaden Business School in Germany. His overall research covers knowledge and innovation management. And he's also the founder of the German Knowledge Management Association and was scientific director of the German Knowledge Management Award. Thank you very much, dear Klaus, for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
Then we have dear Dr. Snezha Kazakova. She has a background in psychology and holds a PhD in communication science from the Ghent University. She is the head of sector within the Innovation and Policymaking Directorate at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. And her team uses insights for behavioral and organizational science to improve collaboration, build knowledge management strategies, and promote communities of practice. So thank you so much, dear Snezha, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And lastly, but certainly not least, we have John Murphy. He's the head of knowledge sharing at the UK Civil Service Policy Profession Unit. John's background is in organizational improvement, particularly around business processes and practices, with a strong emphasis on the role that knowledge sharing has. His focus is also on creating a knowledge sharing ecosystem in which both learners and sharers gain and which therefore becomes self-sustaining. So that's also very important. Thank you so much, dear John, for being with us today. I also would like to thank the audience online. We see that many participants are joining as well. Please feel free to use the chat function. We are going to reserve 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the discussion to go back to your questions. And also thanks to our marketing team who is here supporting us with this online environment as well. So I'm gonna kick off by explaining the title of our conversation, which is the importance of knowledge management in the public sector and its relation to embracing digitalization and AI. Knowledge management basically helps improve decision-making, efficiency, and service delivery by making sure knowledge is shared and kept within an organization. It also helps prevent losing important expertise when people leave or retire. And obviously, a strong knowledge management culture promotes innovation, transparency, and makes collaboration much stronger in an organization. So that's also something important to keep in mind. Its relation to digitalization and AI is basically that knowledge management with those concepts get more powerful and more and stronger. And technology helps organize information, automate processes, and turn data into useful insights. This makes public institutions more flexible, responsive, and ready for the future. It is also important to mention that EIPA has been involved in knowledge management for several years, especially because one of the key criteria in the CAF quality management tool of the public sector is knowledge management. So we have been working with that for a couple of years now. And lastly, what I would like to share as well is that EIPA is organizing a course on knowledge management under the title of Knowledge Management in Public Sector Organizations, Embracing Digitalization and AI, the same title of this conversation. And this is going to happen in Barcelona on the 24th and 25th of April this year, 2025. You'll be able to see the link to register to this course in the chat as well. And we would like to invite you to this discussion. It's gonna be a course that will provide a clear introduction to knowledge management concepts, but also focus on the role of digitalization and AI as well. So we will be exploring some practical, proven knowledge management tools, techniques, and strategies to apply these practices within teams and organizations. So we would really like to see you there. This EIPA conversation is just a start of this discussion. So if you're interested, get back to us or check the link for registration and we will be happy to assist you. So now I would like to kick off with questions, if you allow me. Thank you very much. Don't forget to use the question and answer chat if you would like. And we will start now with some direct questions to our speakers. So firstly, I would like to start by posing the question to Klaus. We know that AI-powered knowledge management can improve collaboration, transparency, and learning in the public sector, as we have mentioned. But adopting these systems isn't just about technology. It also requires shifting in mindsets, breaking silos, and building trust in these AI-driven processes. So, dear Klaus, from your experience, what are the most effective ways for the public sector leaders to create this right culture for transformation?
Thank you, Giovanna, for your question and your introduction. And I think you've made the point. Digitalization and application of AI is not so much a technology question. It's a mindset and a question of organizational culture. These technology enable a way of working differently, of using these tools by getting rid of routine tasks, giving a better service to the citizens. But at the end, there is a mindset. The mindset, which is a type of service do we want to give to our citizens? What is our citizen orientation? And how do we want to deliver these services in a manner of high quality and which can be improved also quickly. And so, as you already said in your introduction, it's a question of creating really a learning organization. And we talk very often about learning organizations. That sounds nice, but the reality of our day-to-day work in public organization is very much type of silos, small teams, we're concentrating on their small process and so on. And so it requires breaking up these thinking of silos in a term of being more oriented towards the goals of our organization, of our delivery of services which we want to deliver. And I think leadership practices, the first leadership practice is to make very clear what is the link between knowledge and skills and the objectives of our service delivery of our organization. And we use a very practical tool in many organizations, which we call the strategic knowledge analysis, where we ask 3 questions. First questions, what do our clients expect from us in the next 3 to 5 years? And what are the skills and competences which we need to develop? Secondly, what are our particular strengths which we are doing better than others? And how to concentrate and fortify those strengths in order to better deliver our mandate. I think this is all of the question which we have. And the third question is, what can we learn from other organizations, teams, or whatsoever? How are they doing their work? I think having this mindset already, mindset of learning and looking outwards and orienting our activities towards a clear objective, which is our service delivery today and our service delivery in the future. This helps very much. And there we've got our tools. And at the core, I think, of this is finding a way of collaboration of teams in the organization. And I think Snessa will develop more on these, because I think learning, collaboration are basically the 2 ingredients for good service delivery.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's a good way to start the conversation. And indeed, I'm going to give then the word to Shineja, who could also build up on top of that as well, because my question to her is also related indeed to this mindset somehow. So Shineja, could you elaborate please on the value of bringing together knowledge perspectives to encourage creative collaboration and also to make better use of collective intelligence within organizations? And also, how do you see AI supporting knowledge sharing and collaborative policy making?
Thank you. And thanks to Klaus for starting by saying that people should be at the core of knowledge management. I think we often forget that because technology moves so fast and we're all very excited. I mean, a lot of us are very excited by where technology is going, but also some are afraid, of course. But we tend to, with this, we tend to forget sometimes that at the core of every change are people and how people behave, how their behavior changes, what needs to change in their behavior, in developing skills or in doing things differently for the organization to be able to adapt, to move forward, and so on. And so in the Joint Research Center, which is the science hub of the European Commission, we try to bring the scientific perspective, of course, around knowledge management, but also we see knowledge management more as an umbrella term. In the Commission, it is, of course, there. Everyone talks about knowledge management and knowledge management strategies, but we think that there is a big distinction between how different colleagues from different director generals of the Commission, for example, see knowledge management and what it means to them. So we have these different vocabularies as well that we often have to align on. And what we try to do is we try to work on topics within knowledge management that we think are important. And in our case, this is collaboration on the one hand, and then communities of practice on the other. We also have, for example, we have a toolkit, a knowledge management toolkit, which talks about more broadly how to develop a strategy around knowledge management. This is very fragmented in the Commission because it's a big organization and there are many different DGs doing their own strategies. But for collaboration and cultural change, which is so important, what we do is we collect scientific insights from behavioral science, organizational science, neuroscience even, so the cognitive sciences. And we have developed now 12 foundational principles of collaboration, which are currently only internal, but we plan to also bring this out externally in the future, really underpinned or rooted in science. And I think a lot of practitioners would recognize them. And we already have participatory leadership practitioners in our organization that are suddenly saying, well, yeah, that's what we do already. So there is this link also between the science and the practice that we see. And so what we try to do then with these principles is that they feed into everything else we do in a way. How we roll out new tools for collaboration, for example, is then bridged by, are these principles reflected then in the behavioral change we try to push. Then on communities, we have done a lot of work over the last few years, and we have something we call the Communities of Practice Playbook. It's available in an interactive form online, but also as a publication. And it provides a kind of structured methodology which is designed to support any organization, also different from ours, in creating, managing, engaging, growing communities and sustaining them. Because this is a difficult process. So the playbook provides a kind of roadmap that has several stages. There are these 8 success factors we have, starting from the vision and the governance, all the way through engagement and to measuring actually what your community's impact is. And why is it important to work on communities? Again, the people dimension, because knowledge management is about how knowledge flows in the organization. And that is all about how people actually interact. And by having these communities of practice around certain topics, etc., we can help things like what was already mentioned even in the intro, retaining knowledge in the organization, or engaging externally with our stakeholders, like in our case, citizens or experts or anything. It is very important to embrace this methodology and to do it right, because often again, the challenges are that everyone tries to create a community, but then they don't know exactly how or what they're doing. They don't have enough resources invested usually, resulting in simply a waste of resources. That's at least in practice what we observe. So we often say, like, unless you have the right resources, don't even start, because there is no point. So it's really, I think it's a good starting point for everyone. And we have also around that what we call a kind of European communities method. So aside from the playbook, we have a checklist, we have a barometer, we have some more practical tools that can be used also to see where you are with your community, what have you maybe not done, where are the gaps, and so on. So these are two aspects on which we are working very intensely. And then on AI. We're also internally working on AI, of course, to try to augment our organization through it, etc. Now, linking to knowledge management, I think there is an interesting dichotomy there. I think some are saying AI will somehow replace knowledge management. Absolutely, I don't agree with. I think we need knowledge management to make AI more reliable. We actually can use the principles of knowledge management, even taxonomies, metadata, etc., to actually make these models that are hallucinating or biased or whatever, feed them our internal knowledge in a way that makes them much more powerful to our own internal use cases. So from that perspective, the two are in a way feeding each other or augmenting each other. So I think there's a very, very important connection there. Because on the other hand, AI systems, of course, can support knowledge management. And later I can give some examples of how we are doing that. But it's important with AI to look not only at the opportunities, of which there are many. So there's from knowledge creation to storage, retrieval, of course, sharing, collaboration, but also applying knowledge, such as knowledge synthesis, and especially for certain public sector use cases, very important. But we also need to very carefully outweigh the risks, of which I already mentioned some. Bias, of course. These are just tools. I mean, even the fact that we call it artificial intelligence, I don't fully agree with it, because it is simply a statistical tool, let's say, that works in a seemingly magical way, but it's not so magical. It's simply predicting the next word in a sentence, talking about generative AI. And these, of course, can lead to errors, hallucinations, etc. But we need to think about the transparency of the models as well, which is why Europe is trying to invest more in open source models. And we are also trying to use as much as possible open source models that are not black boxes that we don't know how they're trained, what they're trained with, etc. And then we have the environmental aspects as well. So, and then just to finish, again, here, the human aspect, I think, is very important. The continuum between human AI, where is the role of the human, where is the role of the AI, which tasks is AI okay to do on its own, which task is we don't need AI at all, and where is our role in AI's role. I think that's a very important reflection that I don't think we are having enough when it comes to AI. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neja, for also talking about the Communities of Practice Playbook. You'll be able to find that in our chat as well. If you're interested in discovering more about those roadmaps and the actions that Neja was mentioning, and good as well that she already started talking about some of the practical tools that they are using on their side. We'll also come back to that a bit later in the conversation. And now I would like to pose my question to John. John, as the head of the knowledge sharing at the UK Civil Service Policy Profession Unit, you have been for sure at the forefront of creating a knowledge sharing ecosystem. What do you believe are the most important factors in successfully overcoming resistance to knowledge sharing within public institutions?
Thanks, Neza. Sorry, Giovanni. I'm often asked what I actually do for a living, and I tell people that I help people to tell stories, which sounds very interesting. And that is actually what we do, what my team does. We work with public servants, and we get public servants to share their stories or their experiences, their careers, or what's happened when they worked on particular programs or projects. And we get hundreds in a year, very senior people sometimes, sharing their stories, spending time, effectively coaching and passing on to tens of thousands of other civil and public servants during a year. So the questions that you get about this are, well, it sounds very nice, but what's the real value of telling stories? Why does it matter to the people who learn, who hear the stories? And why should senior people give up their time? What's in it for them to share their stories? And the answer to this really is, it's sort of twofold. One is you've got to make sure that what people are getting from the process of hearing other people's stories is valuable to them professionally and personally. We do that by making sure that when we know that somebody's going to talk about, say, working on vaccines for COVID, that the lessons they have are shareable across other domains, across other disciplines, whether it's agriculture or military or education. And we tend to reference people to, if you hear this story, it will teach you something about certain competencies. And we have a competence framework, the Policy Profession Standards, which is available on the internet, which is probably something that most people here will be familiar with, a competence framework, you know, different areas. Does this improve negotiating skills? Does this improve understanding the end user's perspective? Does this improve working with external contractors, whatever it might be? So everything we do when we promote the stories is tell people you can learn something that helps you build your competence capability. The second part of this equation is, okay, so that's what's in it for the learners. Why should they give up their time? Because actually they will become more professionally capable. But what about the sharers? Well, the sharers have to be involved here. They have to get as much out of the whole program as the learners do. And what they get out of it is the process of learning how to tell their story in a way that lots of other people who know nothing about their background can understand. If you have somebody who works on international flagging of shipping, then if people who don't work on international flagging of shipping are going to be interested, you've got to change that story into something that is really relevant. What are the learning points? Why does it matter to me? So the person who works on international flagging of shipping has to rethink their story. They have to think about, what have I really learned? What's really going on? What happened on that occasion? And they benefit from the process of reframing, reflective learning. They also benefit from the fact that they know that they are doing more by telling their stories than they could do just by doing their jobs. So one person can spend an hour or so sharing this story with questions and answers with 300, 400, 700 people. That 300, 400 or 700 people have now learned from the experiences of some senior people who are further down the road. So going back to the question about how do you overcome the obstacles or the challenges, the two challenges are, well, it's nice to hear stories, but how do people benefit? Well, we link it directly to competence frameworks. We tell them this is part of your learning. And actually, if you are trying to build up capabilities in certain areas, look at the stories you can come along and hear and see which ones will teach you a little bit more about that area you're trying to build up. And then think about your own continuing professional development. If you're mapping your continuing professional development, you can say, this is an hour I spent. This is one of my, say, 30 units a year. So it's now part of your deliberate learning program, hearing other people's stories. And when it comes to the person who's telling the stories, they will talk about how much time they spent reframing, rethinking, redesigning their own story and how much they have learned about themselves and about their own experiences. And as a consequence, everybody, almost everybody who shares stories, and I mean the very most senior people in government who share stories, comes back and says, what do you want me to do next? When shall I do it again? So I call it an ecosystem because you've got a situation here where if you imagine people early on in their career, they want to learn as much as possible from those who've gone before them. As you progress through your career, you learn more by building up your ability to coach, to mentor, to share what you have learned, and therefore do more by doing it through others, by helping others to have those capabilities that you've acquired. And that's why it's an ecosystem, because everybody within that system is getting something out of it. And that's why it keeps itself going. I hope, hopefully that's outlined the, really how we get over the key challenges and why it works.
That's perfect, dear John. Thank you so much for that. Yes, I think we covered very interesting topics in this first segment, with Klaus, for example, saying that this kind of mindset shift is not really a technology question, but rather a people-related question, which came back on Shineja's discussions as well with the communities of practice playbook. And that it all comes to people and retaining the knowledge in knowledge management, in this knowledge management scenario. And of course, finalizing with John about knowledge sharing, that this brings benefits to both people that are learning, but also people that are teaching in an organization. And it's of course very important to link this with their competency framework so they can really understand the benefits of that. And this creates the ecosystem, so we can really see that this is not a one-time goal challenge, but something that really will come back over and over again. Somehow a learning organization, as Klaus has mentioned before, which is really like a cycle, so to say. So this ecosystem is also very important in that sense too. Right now, I would like to go to discuss with Klaus, because he has kindly accepted to write a blog for EIPA as well. This link will be shared in our chat too, so you guys can check the blog. It's a very interesting piece that talks about creative bureaucracy. And I would like then to ask Klaus if he can really explain this term, creative bureaucracy. Apparently, this term was coined by Charles Landry, and there are three key questions there. Basically, the what, the why, and the how, which I'm sure Klaus will also get into that. And also, finally, I would like to ask Klaus if he could also link those concepts with the learning organizations that we have been talking about, and let's say also knowledge-oriented leadership.
Okay, many thanks, Giovanna, for your questions, for your many questions. I think coming to the term creativity and bureaucracy, this seems to be two things which do not go together. Sometimes if you think about creativity and bureaucracy, you think about getting around the rules, but this is not the issue of it. The issue is of thinking in terms of what are ways and new ways of constantly rethinking what we do and how we do our things. Bureaucracy you would associate with fixed processes, doing things in a systematic manner. Yes, you need to do this. You have to be accountable. You have to be transparent. You have to have clear processes. This is a basis. Some of these processes can be automated and can be routine process. You can put some of these things into chatbots, which give a 24-hour service for citizens or whatsoever. You need this. But a part of that, you need this rethinking of your public service delivery. And I think the argument of Charles Landry is to say a creative bureaucracy is not just a bureaucracy which exploits its current resources and does what is needed currently, but explore what citizens need in the future and adapts to these future needs of the citizens. And this requires a constant also rethinking of how we do things. If we are in a hospital, to think how we can improve collaboration between doctors and nurses in order to improve our services and overcome shortages of resources. If we are in another public specialized agency, we could think how we could shorten times of administrative procedures. Perhaps do we need those procedures, which what we are doing? You got a lot of bureaucracy bashing at the moment. So there's more this question also of rethinking how we do things and how we can do these things better. And this is basically related on learning jointly, but a constant reflection. Where do we stand? Where do we go? And in a very simple manner, let me give you an example from hospitals where I've been working quite a lot. There we have an issue where when one patient leaves after a week or several days, there's always a process of an after action review. And people take this and think over what was well with this patient, what worked well, where did we have some difficulties, what can we improve, where are shortages, and so on. So I have a very short, structured 5-minute review of the team saying, okay, what worked well, what did not work well, how can we improve what we've learned. And this brings a mindset of thinking and rethinking constantly what we're doing. This is not only limited to hospitals, it might be to many other organizations, or in a number of other public sector organizations. In the regular meetings, we institutionalized one question, which is, what did we learn last week? For example, if you have the Monday meeting, you reflect on what is something which we learned in our team last week. Perhaps someone was on a seminar, perhaps you participated now in this conversation, said, oh, there are some interesting ideas. You had an interaction with a new client or in a new project. So this question of rethinking, what have we been learning? What can we do? How can we change what we do? And I think this is very important. And this requires also leaders to rethink how they manage. So instead of always providing all answers, I think it becomes more and more important to ask intelligent questions. The traditional leader in an organization is a guy with sometimes male, old men like me, having sure answers what needs to be done. But I think this does not bring new development in this organization. Ask a question. Why did you do this? Why did we do this? Is this really the right way? Can we do it differently? And when I work with public sector organizations, very often they say, oh, I have very limited possibilities of changing on appraising people. And then we start discussing, say, what can you really do as leaders? How can you change your behavior? How can you basically value contributions of people? Send them to a nice seminar, for example, there's a Barcelona seminar of EIPA. Give them the opportunity to explore their skills in the new projects whatsoever. So in the public sector, there are many opportunities, but this requires also the creativity of leaders to open up ways of learning and getting joint new endeavors and possibilities, be it project, be it seminars, be it short. Try things out. Very often we have this feeling in public service, there is a rule and we have to follow the rule. Yes, follow the rule, but this rule has leeway, and try things out. And all these small things, this type of mindset, this would be the mindset of what I would call, and which Charles Landry also calls, a creative bureaucracy, is combining the sure, transparent, high quality delivery of our services today with the possibilities of rethinking in parallel what we do in order to improve our services for the citizens in the near future.
Perfect. Thank you so much, dear Klaus. And we really invite you to read this blog. It's a really interesting one. So as you said, I think it's also very important to have a main goal in an organization. And if people feel that they are really making a difference, everyone feels part of this group, and we can improve with that as well. If I understand also what you said correctly, Klaus. And you also mentioned about looking outside in other organizations, what is being done, and we can also learn with that. So really open up our minds a bit. Of course, follow the rules, as you said, but trying to learn from those other and different systems is also very beneficial, I would say, too. So right now I would like to explore a bit about some personal experiences of all of you. I'm pretty sure that you have your own experiences where you work, some practical recommendations, practical examples, concrete projects, concrete tools that you have been using. Those ones can be related to AI or not. So I would like to hear from you on that. Maybe I can start with Shineza. that she could tell us some joint research centers, concrete projects on knowledge management that are going on so far.
Yes, thank you. I can mention two things we are doing. So we work also a lot with other DGs in a broader configuration. It's called the Center for Organizational Transformation. It's a cross-DG initiative in the Commission, trying to have an overarching strategy around change. But in the JRC specifically, my team is working on two different projects. One is around really knowledge management, purely knowledge management, with a component of AI. We have a platform that is called the Knowledge for Policy platform. It's an external facing communication platform where knowledge synthesized by JRC scientists, and we have more than 2,000 of them in the Joint Research Center, that is aimed at policymakers or other external stakeholders in the right shape and format. It's of course is communicated through that platform. We have competence centers, knowledge centers of the Joint Research Center that are part of that platform, and we have a big project now to expand it and to broaden it to almost any knowledge that is externally facing, that is residing in the Joint Research Center. And the idea is to have one place where, first of all, it's the platform has very elaborate taxonomy and very good search. So so that's, from a technology perspective, is already a very good basis as a knowledge base. But also it is other components that we want to add, like we would like to cross-fertilize knowledge, because often new policies are require multiple perspectives, really, because you push on one side and the complex system reacts on another, etc. So we would like to have an overarching part of this platform where we bring different teams together to inform new policies from multiple perspectives, again, through knowledge synthesis. And there we also plan to have an AI component as well. So to really integrate generative AI, but not in a bland, basic way, but in an informed way, really, into that platform to help policymakers make sense of the knowledge as well. And then the last aspect of that platform is around communities. We are also going to expand its community capabilities, so that in one space you would have the knowledge, the conversations around the knowledge, and the synthesis of that knowledge across multiple themes and fields. So that's one project that is now multi-year. I mean, it will take probably the next 3 to 5 years, I think, because it requires a lot of migrations of fragmented websites of the Joint Research Center that are now on their own and would move to that platform. And then another project is really purely on AI. We have an internal tool that started from the Joint Research Center called GPT at JRC, where our scientists, AI scientists, started to develop this. They brought multiple models, so we have plenty of open source models in there that you can choose. We also have, of course, OpenAI's models. And the interesting thing about this platform is that it allows us to share our internal commission knowledge, of course, and even more sensitive knowledge, because the open source models are hosted on premise inside the Joint Research Center. So this has been opened up also to institutions, EU institutions outside the Commission from the very start as a pilot. It's been extremely successful. We have, I think, 20,000 users. So it has inspired the corporate platform now that has been launched. So this is a very interesting project and really an incubator for trying out and for piloting AI use cases and what we can do. And it's also going a bit towards the agentic phase now, with thematic spaces where you can customize and create your own little agents and so on. So I think it's probably one of the most progressive and quickly started initiatives that we have seen, because we also talk to other organizations, like about what they're doing, how they're doing it. So that's very, very important to look outside. And so if anyone is interested to know more about it, Of course, it's internal, but it's open to anyone who is in the executive agencies and so on.
Yes, no, it looks very impressive, and from what we hear as well, very progressive too, in which stage you are already in those programs. So really interesting to hear that as well. Then I would like to ask John some examples of AI tools that he uses in his daily work, basically to support this knowledge sharing ecosystem that you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, dear John.
Thanks, Giovanna. Well, they're not very sophisticated. Well, they are very sophisticated. Most of the AI tools are, but the process that we have where we meet senior people and we ask them to tell the story or to share with us their experience, that it's a very iterative process, and it can take quite a complicated conversation to turn what they tell you into something that everybody else will understand and see relevance in. And it creates a kind of bottleneck in the system, because you might have a short meeting and it might be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and it might take you several hours normally to write down and reframe and phrase what they have said. And only certain people there are certain sets of skills to do that. They're quite journalistic skills. Now, simple tools like ChatGPT, free tools, and Microsoft Copilot are wonderful if you at condensing all that information and summarizing it. So we have moved from just doing verbal interviews and trying to manually feed back to people, this is what your story is looking like, and these are what the lessons learned that are transferable, to using ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, talking into it, using the transcription facility on Microsoft Teams, capturing what happens with the permission, of course, of the sharer, and then using the basic AI tools to reframe the story. We still have to go through a process of saying, I see this is a story about this, and these are the key learning points. But what we don't have to do is write it all down in great detail. The transcription tool captures it, and then ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot summarizes it. You still have to go through, you still have to check it and make sure it's not coming up with nonsense. And some things are missing or wrong, but it takes minutes rather than hours. So the first thing there is, it means that the person who's doing the translation job, if you like, the synthesizing job, has far less of that very difficult, time-consuming writing to do. But second, it also means that people who don't necessarily have the journalistic skills to start with can use these tools when they've got a process, when they've got a guidance on carrying out an interview, and then using the tools to capture the key points and the key lessons. And it is quite literally, you can say to the transcript, or you can say to ChatGPT or Copilot, please try and pull out the relevant learning points to a policy professional from this transcript. And that takes so much time away. And what that means is that other people can do it. So now we have a team of people who have never done this before, who are now able to get involved. And that means you can work with that many more senior people. And if anything, it's actually less time consuming to work with more people than it was before these tools became available. And this is early days. I mean, we're not doing anything sophisticated. We're really just using the summarizing facility that the tools have. And I would say to anybody who's wondering about these, try them. We work with policymakers, and we actually have to explain to policymakers, don't be frightened of these tools. You know, yes, if you ask them things and you don't do it right, they might come up with something that's not correct, or they might use the wrong information. But use them within your own control, and they will help you get rid of they'll help recover some of the bureaucracy that Klaus refers to, and focus more on the creativity. And they are very good. And for knowledge management professionals, I talk to knowledge management professionals who are worried that, you know, this is going to take the job away, because who needs us if you've got something to scour all the information in the government department and give you the answers? Well, actually, it creates opportunities for us, because you can't just let the tools go and do it. You have to understand what you're doing, the context, and make sure they're used safely. So actually, knowledge management professionals are, if anything, empowered, I would say, by AI tools, because they can now do things which was far too time consuming to do before.
Great. No, I think even though, as you mentioned, you don't have those very advanced tools, you're still using your time more efficiently. So that's already a good win, I would say. So thank you for sharing that as well, John. Lastly, I would like to ask Klaus how to create those knowledge management and talent management practices in a learning organization in a practical way. Klaus, what would you tell us?
And as time, thank you for the question. As time is running, I would like to focus my answer also on the questions which we already have in the chat, because they are good questions which really help to really try to focus on the issues. You know, there's one question which asking that we mentioned a learning mentality as being key, and the question, how do we learn from other organizations? I've just shared a publication which I've written for the practitioner toolkit on knowledge management, which I've written for the European Network of Public Employment Institutions, because this is a good example. There are most of the public employment organizations in Europe as a network, and they share and learn good practices. For example, how can we in Germany learn from good practices in Denmark to bring long-term unemployed people back to work? This could be a relevant question, or many other questions. So one of the ideas is basically to create this type of learning networks in order to share your insights and define good practices, come up with good practices, share those good practices in the organization. This is one issue of that. Another possibility, which is also related to another question by Konstantinos Christodoulakis, which has been asking which long-term knowledge management strategies can be implemented to continuously improve service delivery. Here, the approach, the common assessment framework, total quality management approach, is a very good answer. I think EIPA has been working as a resource center for this network of institutions which have a structured way of assessing their capabilities, with some questionnaires after self-assessment, come up with an improvement and try to develop basically constantly the quality of the organization. So I would really recommend, if you are not aware, to look into this CAF Common Assessment Framework, which provides a very good guidance to step-by-step improve the organizations. And by the way, many of my assignments and work as an external consultant with public organizations in Europe have started with an analysis by the CAF, in the CAF framework, where organizations find out we are not very good at knowledge and information knowledge management, and could you help us to improve? Because normally then you would have an improvement cycle, plan, do, check, act, and in order to improve your things within 1 year. In the next year, you would say, what have you improved? We come back to the next step of it. So I think it's a quite good possibility to improve things in this area. So I think these concrete examples show you what you really can do. And I think being aware, developing good practices, sharing good practices, reflecting on good practices, this is something which helps. And if you don't do it only based on your organization, but basically look outwards, I think it's even better. But even in your organization, I think you can do quite a lot with that. I think this answers some of the questions which we had in the chat, and perhaps helps also to give you some practical advice.
That's great. Thank you so much, Klaus. It does answer my question and all the other two in the chat, so that was really interesting. I also shared here the link to our website of EIPA, in which you can see more details about this CAF tool. Indeed, there is the plan, do, check, act cycle, and it really answers very well to this question here that was asked in the chat. We still have a couple of minutes, so if anyone in the audience would like to pose any other question to one of our speakers, feel free to do so right now at this moment.
So while you do it, I think just another information on the Barcelona seminar. John and myself, we will be at Barcelona as your resource person, but we will have also some other people in an online way to share their experience on knowledge management. And the idea is in this Barcelona seminar to do particularly what? One thing is to give you a sound basis on knowledge management, theory and practice. And secondly, to use this seminar to share good practices of knowledge management between the participating organizations. So it's learning from from other organizations, learning from different institutions, because we know that the public sector is an umbrella for a very wide range of different organizations with different problems and different issues. But talking about knowledge management, I think we can come back always to a number of issues which we find in lots of organizations.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Klaus. And we do have a final question here from Elner. How can an organization ensure that agile methodologies, which prioritize rapid, decentralized decision-making and interactive learning, do not lean to fragmented, siloed knowledge that undermines long-term knowledge management effectiveness and strategic decision-making?
Perhaps I don't want, if there's someone who wants to give an answer. John, you want to come in, or should I come in, or Snessa?
I can give an example.
Yeah, please.
Because I think the question is very relevant, and thank you for that.
Yeah, it is.
We see this happening sometimes because bottom-up approaches are very powerful to the point where they can backfire. So you have to be careful with bottom-up approaches, and you still need to have a kind of balance between the bottom-up and the top-down. And that's why, for example, we have the Center for Organizational Transformation, where we're often able to see those silos as they appear. You know, we're like, oh, that community is becoming a silo. Can we link it to another one? So we have this broad view of many, many different change initiatives that are happening in the Commission, which is even difficult to keep track of. And then we're able at that higher level to have this bird's eye view and start to combine things when need be and to connect. And another thing with communities, because communities are such a huge driver of change. So change is super difficult. People hate change, etc., etc. So the easiest way to change someone is to have someone next to them that they trust who changes their behavior. That's why we use communities a lot to drive change, for example, in collaborative tools and so on. And then it's good to have an overarching, if you have a very big organization, it's super difficult to do this very centralized. So you need to have a decentralized, let's say, network, communities within a network, let's say. So you have like one community, small community in every DG, and then you have like a network at the higher level where these communities then can meet. So you basically need kind of a layered approach to it, depending on how big your organization is. I think in a smaller organization could work just with one community, but it's very important to have this top-down perspective as well, and make sure that these silos, when they happen, you kind of try to break them and do something about it, because it is true that is a risk indeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very quickly to you, Klaus, there was a final question from Marina. I asked about tips to promote that leaders embrace creative bureaucracy mindset when they don't have it. Should it be any better path to put it into practice?
I think there's no one royal path to it, but I think it's this type of, instead of giving answers, asking questions. I think the first thing is, two things for me would be nurture curiosity, being curious and asking questions. And those two things already create this spirit of thinking what you've been doing, asking, why have you been doing this? Sounds, oh, good, perhaps not. Can you explain me why? Perhaps could we do it differently? This type of question is very helpful. And these after action reviews, which I mentioned, rethinking, reflecting of what we've been doing and how good was it and how can we change it. I think this type of very simple things and this mindset, being curious and asking questions, is already, I say, 80% of getting there.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I think we had a great, a very interesting discussion today, which, as I said, is just a starting point for this course that we are offering in Barcelona. As Klaus mentioned, Klaus will be there, John will be there. We'll also have some other online contributions as well. And this will happen again on the 24th and 25th of April 2025. So it's approaching. Our registrations are open. You can do so, and you can find more information through the link that was shared in the chat. We'll be waiting for you there for sure. And thank you so much for joining today, the audience online. Thanks to the speakers once more. We're very happy to have you here and that you have accepted to share a bit of your knowledge with us. And we hope to see you in Barcelona. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye.